Hey you guys, John Britt here. Hey, I'm going to do a little talk today on types of clay. It's going to be, well, it's part of a free online glaze course I have. This is probably video 26 or something. And today, as usual, I always start these out. I'm just going to do a little bit of it. Well, then it ends up being this monstrous project. And you can see all this stuff I've written on the board. I sort of was talking to my invisible friends and I said, you know you're getting old when this idea makes sense to you in the digital age. I should have this on a computer and show you a PowerPoint and all that, but this is the way I do it, and so I'm getting old. All right, so what I'm going to give you an overview here. What I'll do first is talk to you a little bit about how granite might become kaolin, and then I'm going to go through like the types of clay. So there's kaolin, ball clay, fire clay, stoneware clay, earthenware clay, and bentonite. I'm going to go through each of those, give you some just general highlights, and then I'm going to show you a few books, and I'm going to show you some samples of clays that I have so you can sort of see what they look like. All right, so let's get rolling. Let's see. So I'll just start by sort of showing you one thing I'd like to do is show you some books to read. When I was talking to somebody yesterday, I was explaining to them how I do these free classes online, and then they're kind of like, yeah, that's kind of stupid. You don't do stuff for free. But I grew up going to libraries, and I would see all these books and I would get them for free. And I thought, well, the YouTube is now sort of like the free online library, or Wikipedia, or Tony Hansen's Digital Fire has all this information. But these are great. But this is the book I think is probably the best for this. It has whole pages on stoneware, what stoneware is, and talks about each one. And then they'll have this whole section on earthenware, whole section on bentonite. And so, this is a great book. If you're interested, it's all in there, and you can, at your leisure, read it. And you can also get these things on interlibrary loan. Here's a crazy book on porcelain from Georgia and stuff. This is a really good book if you ever get this. This is the uses of clay products. There's Robert Tishane's Clay Bodies. This one is good. I showed you this last time. And then there's just tons of other books, so I won't go into you can do that yourself. These are the clays I have. I have a bunch of Kalins and balls, so I'll show you that in a minute. All right, so let's start with this. So one of the miracles of ceramics is that you can get a white clay on the earth. And earth has got so much iron in it. There's just a huge amount of iron, and it's hard to get iron out of things. And so the fact that it can occur naturally is just mind-boggling. So what happens a lot is, this is all, everything I'm talking today is super general and just a loose idea. So what would generally happen is we're going to have to make this granite or feldspar turn into clay through erosion. And so what will happen is, like under the ground, this is a large batholith of magma, high silica probably, and that will intrude here. So this is intrusive rock. So that'll intrude and that'll cool slowly. And so it would kind of be like, this would be like a chunk of feldspar, but a granite would be similar. Has all these impurities in it, like mica and then silica. And you can see the mica flakes there. Then what'll happen is, as this thing cools, this tourmaline will form. Tourmaline is a mineral. It's got all kinds of impurities in it. You see how dark it is. So all of those impurities here will coalesce into this tourmaline, which will fall out. And then up here we'll be left with an iron-free zone of material. And then what's going to happen over time, this potassium and sodium, magnesium, calcium, this stuff's going to start eroding away with, ice and snow and crunching rocks and things breaking up and acids and bases, and it's going to flow downstream. And so then what you're going to end up with, this here is a feldspar, potassium feldspar, right here. And then other things go away, and then as it erodes more, this like potassium and all that's going to go away, and you're going to end up with Kalin, Al2O3, 2SiO2. So that's called kalinization. And that's sort of how this happens. That gives you an idea. Now what we're going to say is when this erodes here, when this all starts, so all those little minerals of what you call it, tourmaline fall out, we're going to then have this iron-free area. Now this is going to erode. Sometimes you call that rotting stone, so it'll fill up here. This is called now primary kaolin. It is not moved. It's deposited where it is made. And so it's got large particle side. It's non-plastic. Particles are coarse and angular, and it's also called residual kaolin. So it resides where it was born. Kaolin is Chinese for high ridge. I know that's probably not correct. I don't speak Chinese, but it's just an idea. Whereas it's a district in Jingzhen, and that's probably why they call China clay. Well, we generally refer to China clay, but that just means Kalin for us, English speakers. Okay, so it's a white primary Kalin is going to be deposited here. Now, the reason I have this little line here is that this will be eroding down the way. Everything is eroding to the ocean. That's the ocean. Okay, so what'll happen here is when this erodes some more and it's deposited, that's what is called secondary kaolin. So it's been moved by water or wind or something like that, and then it goes to another spot. And it's plastic compared to other kaolin. So, Edgar plastic kaolin is EPK. EPK is Edgar plastic kaolin, but it's not really plastic compared to ball clays. It's plastic compared to primary kaolins. And the particles are rounded, and they get smaller and smaller as they're moved. All right, so let me just tell you some types of primary kaolin. So Avery's a primary kaolin, Helmer, Kaopak. Like Grollig is a fine plastic secondary kaolin. It's blended from 24 mines. So really that should be down here in EPK. I put that in the wrong spot. So let's make that line there. So these are our primary kaolins, and then secondary ones are going to be the Grollig and EPK, and that is mined by dredging. They spray water and then put it into pools and then collect it in that way. Tile 6, Ajax, Pioneer. Okay, so, and these particles are very small. And by that I mean they're less than 2 microns. So 65% of kaolin particles are less than 2 microns. And then ball clay, 85% of the particles are, so that's why it's more plastic. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Let me show you kaolins here. And so obviously I wrote some stuff down wrong here, but let me just show you. So here's Avery. That's a primary kaolin, and Helmer. So these are a lot of times used in flashing slips. And Kaopak. So let me get my pen here a minute. I'm going to scratch some stuff out. So this is really a secondary Kalin. Well, now, New Zealand Kalin is primary. That's a magnificent Kalin from New Zealand. It's super pure and white. I just have this as a naturally occurring Kalin that I collected. It's very nice. Okay, so then tile 6. The main secondary Kalin is going to be EPK that we all use. And then, tile 6 is, and super standard, that's from England. Graulig, that's from England. Devore is from France. McNamee is from Georgia. And Peerless 1, 2, and there's a 3. And there's a whole bunch more Kalins, but that just gives you an idea. Now let me show you this list I have. So I didn't include all of them. These are the ones I did. This has been about 20 years ago I wrote all these down. But you can see how many. And I got those off of Digital Fire, Tony Hansen's site. So you can Google Kalin and Digital Fire, and then that'll come up. All right, so we may have done that with only a few mistakes. I'll probably make mistakes here, as I'm yakking away. So it's up to you to look all this stuff up. Let me see. I think I had something here to talk about the processing of Kalin. So one thing to know is that it's not just dug out of the ground and then used. A lot of times it is bleached, leached, and run through a magnetic separator to take out iron. And it might be mixed with other chemicals to get rid of iron, titanium, and other impurities. And oftentimes it's delaminated. And what that's for is because Kalin is used to make paper coatings so they can put pictures on them. And so what they'll do is they'll do this attrition grinding and with plastic beads to break the particles apart. It's called delaminating. And what that means is, see, I drew me a little picture of a Kalin particle. It's a large hexagonal particle stacked up in books. So here's a little better picture. And what you're trying to do is break those particles apart without smashing them, so you get a large surface area for your paper making. All right. I think I did that. So now we'll do ball clay. So as this Kalin is then, or clay is then washed down, it'll be moved even further and collect impurities. So as you go down in this diagram, which is very primitive, you get increasing impurities, iron, calcium, chunky bits, titanium, all kinds of stuff is washed down. And but the particle size, as it rolls down there, it's breaking up and becoming smaller and more rounded. But sometimes as you get down here into fire clay, particle size might increase. But generally speaking, we're thinking of it as decreasing and becoming smaller and more eroded. All right, so ball clays are fine-grained clays with iron impurities. If it's over 5%, it's not a ball clay. There's a lot of carbonaceous matter. They're very plastic. And, Kentucky, Tennessee is an area where you get it. That's a company, even a ball clay company owned by Ameris now. And the name ball clay refers to the way the clay was transported in England. They carried it in 30 to 50 pound cloth wrapped balls. That's why they called it ball clay. Okay, so these particles are 10 times smaller than Kalin, and that's one reason they're so plastic. All right, so some of the ball clays, the main one is going, like I said, the main Kalin is going to be EPK. The main ball clay is going to be OM4. That's Old Mine number 4, OM4. And there's many names of these things. Tennessee number 5, number 9, 10, I think is one. XX Sager, Bandy, Bell Dark, Gleason, KT Special, so you know that's Kentucky, Tennessee. Jackson, KTS, number 2. I know there's a, I can't think of it. There's a Glaze clay, that's a kind of a ball clay, KTS, I think. There's KY Special, there's NP Blend, Sphinx, M&D. I think, did I have CNC in there? I know that's one. So we'll look at here, ball clays. So here's the ones I have. I just have these in my collection here, so I just pulled some out. I don't do a lot of clay making. I buy clay mostly, but it's actually a good idea to make clay for yourself. You can just make up a recipe, and I'm going to show you in another video how to do some recipes, construct your own, and then make just 1,000 grams of it and blend it up and pour it on plaster, and then you get a sense of better sense of clay. The reason we want to know all this is because we put glazes on clay. And so it's hugely important to know about your clay body. And then we also put clay, Kalin, or ball clay in glazes. So it's good to know. All right, so there's our main one is OM4. XX Sager's a real good one. Oh yeah, there's the CNC. Okay, so that's our ball clay. Let's see. I had some extra things to say, but I think I'll skip that part. All right, let's talk about stoneware. So as this erodes more, we're going to come to another category of clays. Now remember, these are not clay bodies. These are clays that we would use to make a clay body. And we'll talk about that later. So stoneware clay is the next category. And this is a plastic clay that vitrifies about 7 to 10, cone 7 to 10. And the interesting part about it is you can dig it right from the ground and use it as it is because it has the right shrinkage, the right absorption, and the hardness and density, and can fire to cone 7 to 10. So that's actually quite magnificent and unusual that you would find that. You don't have to add feldspar to it. You don't have to add grog. You don't have to do anything. You just use it right out of the ground. So Seagrove is a place where there was a bunch of high fire clay that you could dig, or Texoma. So that's the deal. Let's see. It's similar to terracotta. So terracotta you can also dig straight from the ground and use it, but it's low fire. They differentiate. This is non-porous stoneware clay, and terracotta is porous. Stoneware clay would have a 1 to 2% absorption. And I'll talk about that a little more. I'll show you how to dig some clay and process it and make some shrinkage and absorption bars and explain that a little bit. Okay, some people call this ball clay with impurities. So the distinction between earthenware and stoneware is given depending on the porosity of the body. So earthenware is very porous, and stoneware is not. Here's another thing. I'm glad I looked at this because these categories I'm telling you are not like firmly set. We're making little boxes to put it in to help our thinking. But in reality, there's a blend, there's a blending of, Kalin to ball clay to stoneware to fire clay. There's like it's not a firm line in between them. All right, so some stoneware clays you can buy would be Foundry Hill Cream, Jordan, Kentucky Stone, Yellowbanks, 401, and Roseville. And I don't have a ton of these. I just had some Foundry Hill Cream because I was making a body with that. But that's all I got. I don't have a ton of them. All right, so then we'll do fire clay. And so we're cruising down here a little more on the erosion front, and this is going to be coarser particles. that are going to be refractory, meaning they don't melt. Lots of carbon. They impart strength to a body. Sometimes this is called the heart of a stoneware body. And it's the refractory industry, so brick making, shelves, stuff like that. And there's types of fire clay. So it might be a high silica fire. I told you there's not a fine dividing line. So there's some plastic fire clays, some high alumina fire clays. So you're going to pick the fire clay for, what you're doing. If you're making shelves or something, you're going to want high alumina. If you're trying to make a clay body, you want the most plastic fire clay you can get, etc. Now, the way this stuff is formed, it's usually, they say it's formed between seams of coal. So Ohio is a typical place. You can find Cedar Heights fire clay there. And what they're saying is that this would have been a forest. And in this forest, there would be a clay there. And so the forest grows up, and then it sucks all the potassium and salts and stuff up into the leaves, and then that's deposited, and that made the seam of coal, and that's why the clay is left with high alumina refractory. I'm not sure if that's all 100%, if it's a myth, or it's like a story to explain it, or it's actually factual, but that's what I've read. And you get lots of spots and grogs and stuff in there, and that's because of the size of the iron particles. Okay, so that's that. Let's see what we got for fire clay here. We've got the main fire clay that we probably have nowadays. See, the trouble is getting this fire clay from industry is like AP Green went out of production because they didn't want to mess with potters. We would complain too much about calcium chunks and stuff, and in brick industry they don't really care that much. So we don't have a lot that we can get, but I know you can get Hawthorne Bond 35 and 50 mesh. Cedar Heights is a common, but I don't have a sample of it. I know Newman's is a fire clay. I'm not sure if that's still available. And then also remember with these clays, a lot of times they're East Coast, West Coast stuff. So what we get out here in the East is different from what we get out West. Out West, one I know is called Lincoln fire clay. I didn't tell you these. Cedar Heights, Gold Art, AP Green, Salt Lick, Lincoln, Green Stripe, Pine Lake. Those are the clays, fire clays. Okay, so now we're going to do earthenware clay. So like I said before, earthenware clay is similar to stoneware clay, but it's low fire. So it's also towards the end of this erosion thing, and it's got a lot of impurities. Earthenware, it means cooked earth. It's the most common clay. It's like a stoneware clay that you can get and use right out of the ground. You can just dig it up and use it. And it's got a lot of impurities. It's porous, so it's over 5% absorption. So that's a lot of absorption. More like 10%, a lot of them are. And usually you fire it to like 0.5, so about 1880 or something. So it's a low fire clay, secondary, been moved around, a lot of iron in it. So one of the clays would be called Lizella, Ocmulgee, Red Art. Red Art is air floated. In case you don't know what that means, is when they're grinding it, they grind it up, and the heat from the grinding causes it to rise up and go through these, it's collected, and then that's the clay. But it's very dry, so it's lost all its, its porosity. So it's not like, I can't think of it now. The clay that you make in bags, you leave it wet, so you don't let it ever dry out. It's very plastic, so it's filter press, they call it. So you make the clay, you put it in these bags, and then you press it, water comes out, it makes it usable, but it has never become completely dry like an air-floated clay. So Starworks makes their clay with filter pressing, which is why it's so good in plastic. All right, so Albany, Sheffield, and Barnard are types. I've only given you a few types, but here these are. So Red Art is the main one. You can have Yellowbanks, Albany, Arroyo, Barnard, that's out of production too. Oh, I forgot to show you this. I forgot to show you all these types of ball clay. So I did the same thing here as I put them all in this list. And then here's all the earthenware clays that I wrote down. Not all of them, but the ones I wrote down. Okay, you know, when people see these lists of mine, they want to get a copy of it, but you really don't want a copy. You want to make your own list, because in doing that, you'll incorporate it more into your mind. So I would go on to Tony Hansen's digital site and look for earthenware clays. You know, see what I can find. Then I would look up like Georgia clay manufacturers. See if you can find, you know, something down there. That's where a lot of it is. Anyway, it's just very helpful to you to get a sense of all the type. And you see how dark all these are. That's all the iron that's in there. And you see how white and light all of these are. Okay? All right, so we did that. We're actually moving along not too bad. All right, so now the last one we're going to do is bentonite. So bentonite, also there's many names like montmorillonite, smectite, hectorite. It's extremely plastic. So this clay is 10 times smaller particles than ball clay. So 1 gram, if you broke it up and laid it out, would be 750 square miles of area. That's how much surface area it is. Okay, so it swells 15 times its size at least. There's calcium and sodium bentonite. There's actually many types of bentonite. 2% can add plasticity to your clay body. You know, same thing with the glaze. A lot of times you just add 2% bentonite to keep things suspended and not falling out when you're trying to glaze stuff. It's weathered, altered, volcanic ash or tuff. So it's kaolinized volcanic ash. That's what it actually is. It's got many uses. Oh, this is one of the great things about this book is that it'll tell you all the uses of these things. And bentonite is one that's got some great uses. It's used in mining, so they'll dig a hole and they use bentonite as the lubricant in there. And like I know I had cement delivered in a pump truck. They first ran bentonite, wetted it up and then ran it through the hose to lubricate it. There's just a whole ton of them. I'll let you look them up. That would take me too long to say all of them. I'll tell you one. It's used to seal ponds in, like farm ponds. So you open a bag of bentonite in Texas, they would do this. They would spread a bag of bentonite on the lake, and then it would percolate down and seal that from leaking. Another thing would be in like winemaking. You use it to, you put it in there, and then you have it deflocculate, settle out, and pull all the particles that you don't want in your wine out. And then you decant that off. All right, so bentonite's the main one. Standard bentonite is one I'll show you in a second. There is bentonite L and H. There's macloid and V-gum. That's twice as strong as bentonite. So if you had a body and you made 2% bentonite, you'd only need 1% macloid. And the one reason you use macloid is because it's got no iron, so it can make a white porcelain. It keeps it very white. So here is the Bentonites. And you can see how dark that's the impurities from standard bentonite. And then here's McLeod. There's V-Gum T and V-Gum Sur, so this has CMC in it. Bento Bright, Bentone EW, there's a ton of these things. Like here's a list. And then I think I have this I have this fire clay list too, I forgot to tell you. Oh, I forgot to show you. Oh yeah, I did show you the Kalin ones. All right, so that is that. Talked about, I think we talked about everything. Wow, fantastic. All right, well, thanks for tuning in and spread the word about the free online glaze course and read over 1,000 books for next time and then we will continue.